drip edge, gutter apron, all of the things that are required by local building code, they weren't there.
How much money we're talking about for the entire claim at this moment?
They agreed to pay $40,000 total for the claim. My attorney, he wasn't going to say what needed to be said about these insurance companies wanting, he was going to let them paint the story on us however they wanted.
You already mentioned it. Let's dive into your claim against State Farm. So you sued State Farm. Tell me start to finish. What happened on the job? Why did you make the decision? Was it the first time you sued insurance?
First time I sued them. For the reason that we started using the assignment of claims and benefits. So when I was doing retail work, for $185 a square, occasionally we would meet someone that wanted to file an insurance claim and had filed it. And I would meet the adjuster, right? And he'd say, "Fine, we'll pay for it. Just send us your estimate." And initially, I was just obviously concerned that we weren't going to. I'm only charging $885 a square. There's no place for me to go. And so we'd submit our estimate. The estimate, is we're going to remove the roof down to the deck, inspect the decking. We're going to replace all your flashings. We're going to install ice and water shield the code. We're going to install, felt on the balance of the roof, drip edge, gutter apron. We're going to do all of these roofing components, right? We're going to use CertainTeed landmark shingles at the time. We're going to use Shadow Ridge at the time. CertainTeed starter, we're going to give them the warranty, right? And $14,000, that's the price, right? And you send it to the insurance company, to the adjuster that you met in the field, and he's like, "We can't accept this." And you're like, "Why not?" Because it's not an Exactimate. It's not an Exactimate. So
it's way cheaper than Exactimate.
right. But here's the thing. This is when I look back in time, and I just realize, it was just going to be a fight. It was just going to be a fight, no matter what, right? If I had Exactimate at the time, then they would have fought with my line items. Because I didn't have Exactimate, it was you don't have Exactimate. It was just, I think that the claims process is designed to be painful, 100%, right? If you need $30,000 for your job and with no problems whatsoever, they just give you $30,000, how likely are you to file another claim? Of course, right?
Everybody, if it would be easy, everybody would be doing it.
That's right. So you get to chase the contractors that are faint of heart. You get to chase them away. You get to, your customer, whether they stay or they leave, it doesn't really matter. You've maximized your opportunity with that customer. Now you're starting over anyway. So it's got to be kind of painful. The good hands boxing gloves thing. If you take what we give you the first time, you get the good hands treatment. We're in good hands. If you ask for anything more, we're giving you the boxing gloves. And that's basically how it went. So I can't give them my $185 square estimate because it's not line itemed within Exactimate. And I'm fearful of, what the future looks like, because now I've just learned how to do this insurance thing, right? And I know what the competitive marketplace looks like. And I'm like, all right, well, we need to get Exactimate so that we can at least submit our estimates to the insurance company, right? So we get Exactimate, and this is in 2010 or 11, and start writing our own Exactimates. We're not even supplementing the file. We're not even asking for ice and water shield. State Farm, now they do it paid when incurred, or they give it right up front. But way back, you can maybe remember, they didn't used to pay ice and water shield. A lot of companies didn't pay ice and water shield, drip edge, gutter apron, all of the things that are required by local building code, they weren't there. I'm paying for it to be done. So in 2014, we hired a guy that comes from the Waxahachie tree of roofing, the Hates and all those guys, going way back. This young man worked with them, and so he's like, "You got to supplement, man." He's like, "I don't know how you guys are even doing what you're doing." The truth, the way that we're doing what we're doing is I did a bunch of commercial work as well. And so I had some, still not a high margin, but a high volume of profit, right? And so that's how we were able to stay afloat through all that time. Looking back, my expenses were getting greater, my margins were getting smaller, but I did a lot of work, and so I had a good amount of money. So we started the supplement process. We're fighting with these guys. The insurance company is saying no all the time. We're not paying for this. We're not paying for that. We're not paying for this. You could a 2-story 12-12 pitch out in the middle of nowhere pays the same amount as a 2-story 12-12 pitch that has a pond in the backyard, where you absolutely have to do more work in order to do this job. And if this is a retail job, I'm telling the people, hey, listen, you got a pond in your backyard. I'm going to have to do extra things in order to do your job. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but don't worry, because if you were to get an estimate from anybody else, it'd cost them more as well. And anybody that doesn't know what they're doing, you're going to get a good deal from, but a good deal is going to turn into a bad deal. And that's what always happens when you do business with someone that doesn't know what they're doing. And so 2016, all of this, I'm accumulating life experience. And I talked to a guy at a conference, and I'm like, I have this problem. Like, they're just not paying, no matter how reasonable my exactimate is. It's nonstop fighting. And he's like laughing. He's like, well, that's how it is, man. That's just like that. Of course, that's how it is. And I'm like, well, I don't like that. And he's like, well, have you tried the assignment of claim? And I'm like, no. And he explains it to me. And you remember when I was like, oh yeah, just tell him to do the work for the insurance proceeds. Immediately I have this like, there's no way people are going to sign this thing. And then I'm like talking to other people, and I'm like, a good salesman that's honest and has integrity and looks you in the eye and can communicate intelligently, like, this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? It transfers the responsibility of working through the process and collecting your money to you where it should be in the beginning. Like, why? Then they gave me the car. You wreck your car. Who do you take it to? You have need a heart. They gave me the same example. And as I thought about it, I was like, yeah, there's absolutely no reason why, number one, like, the customer doesn't know how many starter shingles are going on the roof. They don't know how much drip edge is necessary. In fact, they want you to take care of it. They want you to do it.
Yeah, just like in the car industry, you drop the car and you don't do anything else. You're not in the middle of a conversation. Nobody gives you updates. Wherever they bill, wherever they charge, you want your car back and make sure it drives. Can you explain to me AOC one more time for people who have no idea what it is? And is it legal in your state?
Yeah. So the assignment of claim, assignment of benefits is not an assignment of the policy. What it effectively does is transfers the benefits of a claim to another party.
Like a contractor or shop or
right, auto body repair shop or
doctor.
Or the doctor, right? Like, when we explain it to people, that's exactly what we say. Most people remember that they've signed 5 pieces of paper from the doctor's office when they sit down, have their kids their yearly checkup, whatever it is that they do. Most people don't read it. In one of those is basically an assignment that says that the doctor's office and his representatives are able to deal with this business transaction, the payment for the service that he's provided and the services that he's going to provide with the people that are paying. In this case,
an assignment of claim always guarantees that insurance pays you direct too, right?
It's supposed to.
Your name would be on the check.
Yeah, it is supposed to, but insurance companies don't have contracts with contractors. So one of the things that they do is they completely ignore the assignment of claim.
Is that what happened in your case, and that's why you sued State Farm?
It absolutely did. So first of all, we came out and we signed an insurance contingency with the Claussens. We did an inspection.
Was it hail damage claim?
It was hail damage claim. The Clausens were gone on spring break, as was I. We live less than a mile from one another, in a small community, in a medium-sized community in Iowa, in Bettendorf, Iowa. I lived in LeClaire, they live in Bettendorf. And there was a storm that happened on March 15th, 2016. We were on spring break at that time, not together. I was somewhere and they were somewhere. The Clausens had returned from their spring break. We had already been doing work in their neighborhood. They have a neighborhood. They have very nice homes in their neighborhood. They are expensive roofs and siding projects. And so Matt Shepard, a salesman that worked for us, was in the neighborhood. We had received some phone calls from people in the neighborhood, and Matt had gone and inspected their properties and agreed to do the approved work for the insurance proceeds, which I had learned in Tennessee. And now here we're in 2000. So that was in 2010, 2016. I'm running a team of guys that are doing this as a practice, as commonplace. And I know that you're not a person that necessarily appreciates knocking on doors, but
I have no problem with it.
Right.
I mean, some of my sales guys do, which is different type of comment. When you have plenty of leads, it's not needed.
I completely understand, and I wish I had that problem. But regardless of if I had your problem where people were calling in, I would still want my guys to knock the door on the left and the right.
And we do that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, once you're in a neighborhood, a soft introduction, we do that a lot as well.
Yeah, we call it 6-packing the neighborhood or
Yep.
12-packing it. That's a roofer humor for you. But anyway, so backstory is Clausens come home, and Sarah says to Brant, like, look at all this activity in the neighborhood, and look at our roof, it's missing shingles. And so at a later point in time, sometime after that, my rep is in the neighborhood and he knocks on their door and offers to do an inspection, right? And so he does the inspection, he sits down and signs an agreement to do the work for the insurance proceeds, signs an insurance contingency that probably the language wasn't the best in the insurance contingency. And this is in...
What was wrong with it? What kind of language he shouldn't use for some of those people who watching could learn?
It said that the Clausens had hired us as their general contractor, and we would, in a nutshell, ensure the property damage, the correct property damage adjustments. The adjustment word is when I was...
You're not a public adjuster.
Right. And when I was, when I was proofreading that, my thing was like the construction, right? Nothing speaks for the building. So you either have to have a contractor or the homeowner speak for what's going on here. And my familiarity with what we had done to that point in time was that there's constantly adjustments being made to the scope of work based on damages that you find. And I certainly was not holding myself out to make adjustments like a public adjuster would be. In fact, I've never ever charged or advertised to charge money for adjusting a claim, but the Clausens weren't going to be on their roof taking photos of any additional damage that they found. They also weren't going to walk on the roof with the adjuster. Homeowners don't walk on roofs with adjusters, ever. Like, that doesn't happen. And so, Shepard met State Farm on site. State Farm agreed to pay for the roof, and the left and right sides of siding and the 15 square feet of siding on the front of the house. And the siding was, this is 2016. This is June of 2016. So a good amount of time had passed between the storm and when we were meeting out there at State Farm. The siding was mastic rustic envoy. And that siding was, first of all, the color sand tone or desert sand. I can't remember which one it was. I think maybe it was desert sand, but it was discontinued in the spring of 2015. And so we are presenting to State Farm that we can't replace this siding and replaced just 2 sides plus the front, it's been discontinued. We had an ITEL report that said the siding has been discontinued, and the adjuster's like, no, the siding hasn't been discontinued. Well, it was kind of semantics. The color had been discontinued. State Farm didn't write for painting the siding. There was no information or indication from the adjuster that that there was going to be additional work that was going to be done as a result of this color being discontinued. And we didn't put all of it together either. And I'm constantly saying, I have this ITEL, it says it's discontinued. And he's saying, well, I'm told it's still available. And I said, well, let's talk to ABC. We'll just find that out. So he talks to ABC, and some time had passed, and he talks to ABC and he says, yeah, okay, I guess that that color is no longer available. And right. So ultimately, but months have passed, right? Like we weren't able to get the roof done. June was the adjustment. We were super busy that year. So it was September or, the fall, we do the roof. Shepard's no longer with the company. There were some delays that we were responsible for, no doubt. But a big part of the delay was just that we had a disagreement on what we were going to do with this siding. Finally, State Farm says, finally the Clausens call and they're like, hey, what's going on with our claim? Like, what is going on? Like, whether you have an assignment or just an agreement with the customer, they think that you're going to take care of the claim. That's what they think.
They want to get it done.
That's right. And they don't necessarily want to be spearheading the effort, right? Like, I signed a contract with you, you're going to take care of it. And so, I get involved in the process and I'm like, here we have some disagreements on the siding. What have you been able to get done as far as working with State Farm? Like, there was a couple that came out initially. They took care of the roof, some of the siding. At a later point in time, a guy named Eric from State Farm, he started handling the claim. They're like, we are not able to get anything done. They had a home in Georgia that had water damage. They had a similar, they had 6 months pass before they finally were able to get any coverage on that. And so they're like, well, what can we do here? And I'm like, well, you can, I'm not a lawyer, but you can either accept what they're giving you, you can litigate it, find a lawyer, or you can assign it to me and I'll try to figure out what to do with it. And I mean, this is the first time that I had done an assignment of claim. And the only reason that I did it was because like I'm looking very bad here in front of my customer, not able to get anything done. Again, some of that problem is a problem that I had with one of our employees and the inability to get it from start to finish. That's a small part of it. The big thing is that when you don't have an agreement and scope of work,
you don't want to take a risk.
Yeah, and the path forward, it's unknown, right? I mean, you can't just go and replace something. And I mean, they already, even after you do everything you said you're going to do, you send them the bill and they don't pay. If you do that without some sort of agreement, at that point in time, we were just really super hesitant to do that. We're not anymore. So they said, listen, we just really want to be done with this. So like we want to assign it to you. We don't want to incur the cost to sue our insurance company. We hope that you're able to get it resolved without doing that. But like, we're like over this. And so they assign it to me. Ultimately, the insurance company agrees to pay for all the siding, but the siding was behind the soffit. So the fascia and soffit were over the top. So that was the next disagreement that we're having. Like, you need to replace the fascia and soffit. It was a terrible mess. It was a shit show. And super frustrating, right? And not like knowing fully well my footing on the assignment, but trusting that I had a lawyer draft the assignment. So he said that the assignment law was settled in Iowa and that claims are absolutely able to be assigned. And so ultimately, our estimator sent State Farm an estimate for $55,000, prior to having a knowledge of everything that happened. And then we sent them an estimate for a bit more to include the fascia and the soffit and the gutters. Then they had a screened in back porch that had siding behind it with, it was, you'll never, maybe up north you might have these or at your fish camp, but they had taken and scribed the ledger board or scribed the board where the siding meets the board for the screen and porch. And like, that's not, like, there's nowhere in the estimate for a trim carpenter to come in and repair that. I mean, there was a lot wrong with so we're continuing to estimate these things and send them to the insurance company. And again, all the work isn't done. So these are estimates that we're sending to the insurance company. And basically it came to a point in time where they're like, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to pay you. And they had already agreed to replace the siding, right? So we do the siding replacement, and in where I'm at, we get a lot of.
How much money we're talking about for entire claim at this moment? So they agreed to pay for the siding. They agreed to pay. What about a roof?
They agreed to pay $40,000 total for the claim. Okay. It's a very large roof. Today it would be a $100,000 claim. This is in 2016.
So in just 5 years.
Oh yeah, but that's what they agreed to pay is $40,000, sure. Right? Like our final estimate for all of the extras and everything was $77,000. Again, I have in excess of $30,000, somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. Like, I've gone back and looked at everything. My example of cost of goods sold times 1.65 to 2.1, it works. It works across the board. I had in excess of $30,000 and less than $40,000 spent on labor and material only. On labor and material, that's no overhead, that's no salesman's commission, that's no management, that's no super. It was. The amount of money that we were asking for was not, it was reasonable. And furthermore, I came to find out as I started studying my lawyer's file, I have boxes because my lawyer did us such a disservice from start to finish. But State Farm, in preparation for trial, right, you do discovery, and they were building their defense until they decided that they were going to try to go a different route. But they had, hired a company out of Cedar Falls, Iowa to come in and write an estimate. Well, their estimate before overhead and profit was $46,000. Wow. Well, $46,000 plus overhead and profit, according to their standard, is $55,200. And you're asking $77,000. Well, right, but remember, my first estimate prior to all the specialty work was $55,000. Like, they knew that we were in line up until a certain point. And the 77 takes into account the fascia and soffit. It takes into account that specialty work that had to be done by a trim carpenter. We substitute as much as possible premium grade vinyl siding for aluminum. Here's why. Where I'm from, we get a lot of storms that are P to quarter size, right? We get very few storms that are larger than that. Like, in the course of 20 years, maybe there will be one storm that is of proportions that are significant like that. P to nickel size hail never harms premium vinyl siding, ever. It doesn't break it, it doesn't do anything. Nickel size hail will badly dent aluminum siding. The cost for installation is similar. And so we think that we don't charge it as an upgrade, but we definitely sell it as this is the better product. So we did that on their claim. State Farm went on to say, well, you guys use this inferior product, and they did everything that they could to make us look bad and present it in a way that we were this off, that we came unannounced, that, when you prepare for a trial, you do depositions, right? And that's a part of, and you ask for discovery. You want to know everything that the other side knows about you, and they want to know everything you know about them. And then you're going to talk to the people that were involved to get their side of the story. When we went into depositions, I was deposed, my wife was deposed, Brant Clausen was deposed, Sarah Clausen was deposed, and was it hard for the homeowners to be involved in this? It was super hard for the homeowner. It was really hard for the homeowner because my lawyer gave them absolutely no notice that they were going to be deposed. How did you find your lawyer? How did you choose your lawyer? I was at a conference, and I'm not going to tell you the name of the firm that
We'll find out.
You will find out. But I was referred to McGinn Law Firm out of Omaha because this big firm that had referred me to this guy, they were not licensed to do work in Iowa and Nebraska, I think. And there was a large contractor from Omaha and Council Bluffs that was having a major problem. And so he wanted to use this big firm, but that firm didn't have licensure. So I don't know if it's pro hawking or ad hawking, but they basically made a deal where they could come side by side the licensed person. And so that law firm that I'm talking about, they basically said, hey, we can't do anything in Iowa. And I found out ultimately that they probably didn't want to do anything in Iowa at that point in time based on the environment. But they referred me to this other firm, McGinn Law Firm. And I started off working with a young guy, Kyle McGinn, who was a lot of bravado. We were built similarly. We had a lot of similar personality traits, which, trailblazing and really turning the industry on its head. It was a very unhealthy thing. So,
because I'll interrupt you for a second. I watched Core's video, and I could say that judges were in favor of homeowners. The judges were not on insurance company side. You could see it, you can feel it, you could feel the arguments. The arguments were stupid, and the judges were calling out the questions they were asking. I'm like, they're gonna win this. Like, I'm listening to it. I'm like, this is good stuff.
Yeah. So, we had been in litigation with American Family prior to that, and
did you win that one?
Well, I won a bunch of lawsuits up until a certain point in time, and ultimately the way that I won them is the courts sent the litigation to appraisal, and then I got the value that I was asking for in appraisal, and it worked that way for a long time. And whenever we went into the courtroom, we never won with this guy. We didn't win. We lost, and we lost because they didn't prepare, and we lost. I mean, one of the trials, my lawyer did not have the expert's testimony by the deadline, so we weren't able to use an expert. Like on another trial, a former employee that we did not separate on good terms, his father-in-law was the American Family expert witness.
Wow.
Yeah, we had
all odds are against you.
Well, I mean, there were people, like, we live in a small community, right? On one of the juries, I did the roof of one of the people on the jury, and one of the gals was the older sister of one of my best friends in high school. Like, and he's like, oh no, I like these guys. And I'm like, I don't think that it's a good idea. I think we would rather have complete strangers. I don't think we want, even if it is a benefit, I don't think we want people that we know, because here's what I knew. I knew that the opposing counsel was going to paint this as greedy contractor just wants more.
They always do.
Right. And I could tell from my attorney, like, he wasn't going to say what needed to be said about these insurance companies wanting, I mean, he was going to let them paint the story on us however they wanted. And he wasn't going to be able to match their firepower. And we really care about our reputation in the community. I mean, I've done repair work in our community for free, right? So we're trying to build up goodwill, right? Like, I do little repairs here and there for free, because at some point in time they're going to need something big, and when they do, they call me. And that might be a strategy that I would rethink going forward in the future.
I would rethink that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt. But I mean, again, like, it worked out really well for a really long time, right? And so you learn. you learn. So anyway, there were a lot of different things that happened with our council. I would say this, that I think the presented with a better story, presented with more facts, presented with the truth of the situation, the Supreme Court comes to a different conclusion. I mean, the conclusion that they came from did not best serve the public interest. The public's interests are best served when the doctor charges for his services, when the auto body guy charges for his services, and when the repair contractor charges for his services. That's what's in the best interest of the public. The idea that
what did you get at the end? So what was the verdict conclusion? They were paying what, 40? You were asking for 77. How did it settle?
we did not get $1. We got exactly what
40,000.
they offered. That's right. And so
how much did lawyer and legal fees cost you?
a lot.
More than 10 grand.
But more importantly, so
It's precedent. It's case study now.
it's precedent. But what happened was the court said that 33 Carpenters Construction was acting as a public adjuster without a license, and the Iowa Insurance Division issued a cease and desist operating as a public adjuster without a license. The local news station ran a story saying local contractor ordered to cease and desist operations. Not operating as a public adjuster without a license, cease and desist operations. Wow. The county sheriff came into my office full of people and says, "You guys got to shut this place down." So we read the order. We're like, we don't have to shut down. We have to stop operating as a public adjuster without a license.
Which is just change their contract.
Right. But I mean, the deputy that came and delivered that, right? He didn't know that. Like he had his job to do, and he was there to do his job, and he did it. And
did they shut you down? No.
No, of course not.
Of course.
I mean, we contacted our lawyer immediately, and he's like, "Why are they doing this?"
But they have all this negative publicity.
Yeah, and it was at the encouragement of insurance agencies, right?
Yeah, we won. Let's go. Let's make it public.
Right.
They probably did a press release for it.
Probably so. Competition, right? We talked about how roofing contractors are cannibalistic. There were a lot of.
You give them one opportunity, they'll take it. They'll blast it.
Right. So some interesting things. I think you got to unpack. You need to understand what the Supreme Court said we did that constituted public adjusting without a license. One of the things that they said that we did was we had a 6-step process on the internet that advertised that we would act as an advocate on your behalf, which is language that is forbidden in the court. If you're not a licensed public adjuster. But we had public adjusters that worked for us. In 2014 until 2017, we had no less than 3 public adjusters that worked for us. My lawyer says, well, we would have had no way to know that. I said, in 2019, you submitted an affidavit in an American Family case that I had to sign saying we had no less than 3 public adjusters on staff. And he's like, well, yeah. Oh yeah. So remember when I told you that that my counsel, the young guy, that he failed to provide my expert on a timely fashion, so I wasn't allowed to use him. Well, after that happened, I said, you can't represent me anymore on anything ever again going forward. So they substitute in this guy named Ed Nate. Ed's a good guy. He's a good guy, but he didn't have all the information, and he didn't go get all the information. He used a brief that was prepared by Kyle McGinn, who I forbid to ever represent me again. He used that as an arguing point with the Supreme Court. He had success at an earlier point in time against American Family in the state of Iowa in this same district courtroom. He submitted this affidavit saying that we had these public adjusters, and the judge said, yeah, you weren't public adjusting without a license because you had public adjusters. Ed didn't bring that to the Supreme Court. One of the other things that the Supreme Court said is they said that that Matt Shepard discovered the damage and shared it with the Clausens. It was unbeknownst to them at that time. Well, it wasn't unbeknownst to that time because in their depositions, Clausens come home from spring break and she says to him, look at the roof, there's missing shingles. They knew that they had damage. It says that we directed the customer to file an insurance claim. Like, we did not direct anybody to do anything. We presented with them with all the information. These people live in $1 million house. Like,
Absolutely.
do we needed to advise them on?
You said it right earlier. Someone needed to paint a better picture for the court, for the judge. Let me ask you this. After you lost, how much business did it cost you? Because you have all this negative publicity. It's a small town, people talking about it. Do you feel like, or could you put a number to it? Did it affect your sales? Did it affect your reputation?
We know that we lost at least $15 million last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
How? Last year? Because of that?
Because on Valentine's Day, the Iowa Supreme Court issues their ruling. In
last year,
2020, Valentine's Day, February 14th. March, we go on spring break. When we go to spring break, the schools come out on one day and say, the one day into spring break and say, we're going to shut down for a month. And the next day they come out and say, we're not coming back to school this year. Maybe that's not how it happened. They said that we were going to take a long time off, right? So we stay in Florida for 3 weeks instead of our 1 week. So we come back the first week of March, and on April 7th, it hailed baseballs at my shop for 18 minutes.
Wow.
It was the worst timing of all time. I mean, it was the most, if I didn't have my faith, it was a bad time. I had, people from the community were coming to our office to sign up. Like, I wasn't having to, it was the dream. The news came and interviewed me, and I said, hey, listen, I know that people are unsure about their employment situation because of the coronavirus, and that we are dealing with some restriction in our movements, but we're absolutely necessary, and we would like to, let people know that we're hiring. We are absolutely hiring. We are an essential business. And so what that did was it activated the insurance people and our competition. The insurance commission issues their cease and desist. The local news picks up the story, and 11 homeowners associations that I have done repair work for 7 years for free, and the person that manages them leaves me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting lesson on loyalty. I wasn't painted by the Supreme Court as being a fraud or having done anything deceptive. Yeah, no, there was never any impropriety in terms of taking money from people and not doing work or doing bad work or anything that anyone would ever be concerned with doing what we do for a living, replacing people's roofs. There was never any question about, do these guys honor their warranties? It was very simply an issue of the insurance company is doing what they always do, which is trying to starve out
contractors,
right? Contractors,
and make us look bad.
Absolutely. And we were, we had done everything that we knew how to do to collect our fee, and we're just, frustrated and sick and tired of them saying no, we're not going to pay you for this work that you've done, and creating great conflict with us and our customers, creating great conflict with us and them, the insurance carriers. The news runs the story. The lawyer does an awful job allowing it to even get to the point where it got to. Summary judgment is it's a thing in courts, right? Like, so when we sued State Farm, we said that we wanted to have a trial, a jury trial. We wanted people to hear both sides and decide the matter. Well, you know, in litigation, there exists an opportunity where if there's facts that are agreed to by both sides, by both us, the people suing, and State Farm, the people being sued, that that a judge could take those issues under advisement and issue a ruling without going to a trial. It's called summary judgment. And so, you know, our attorney did not argue a bunch of things that needed to be argued in that summary judgment. Like, we got whipped back and forth because of our attorney's poor performance. And then, you know, if you go through and watch the Supreme Court thing, you know, you'll see the judge says, "Is there any reason why your client can't just go get a public adjuster's license and cure all this?" And, you know, the client is 33 Carpenters Construction, right? 33 Carpenters Construction is a corporation afforded some protections because we organized as a corporation. And the lawyer says, no, the president of our corporation is a convicted felon. And, you know, my wife is the president of our corporation, and my wife is not the client. 33 Carpenters Construction is the client. In their brief, you know, they say that
anybody in the company could hold a license.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that was the wrong answer. In front of the Supreme Court, that is not what you... Man. Yeah, that's not what you say.
I mean, if I learn one lesson from this, that number one, you need a good lawyer that specializes in dealing with insurance companies, not just some... Oh, man.
Yeah, I was telling Quentin on the way over here, I'm like, listen, the insurance company is going to use an expert. They're going to use the best lawyer around. That's who they're going to use. They're going to use an expert. Our guys were not first-party insurance claims experts. Our guys were outgunned. It was a bad situation. You know, in 2012, July 2012, the state of Iowa passes a statute saying you got to give the customer contract obligations and rights, which basically says to the customer, like, despite whether or not your insurance company agrees to pay you for this thing, you may still be held liable for this thing.
So they took away AOC law.
Well, no, in 2012, what they were doing is they were trying to affect the sales process, right? They're trying to discourage you from signing an insurance, because that was the first battle that insurance companies tried to do. They tried to stop this insurance, this contingency agreement, right? The insurance proceeds contract. They hate that. They absolutely hate it, and probably with good reason. So that happens in 2000.
Sorry to interrupt. What did they pass on April 14th or February 14th?
February 14th they didn't pass anything. They just came to an opinion that we had indeed been acting as a public adjuster without the license to do so. And because we did that, our assignment contract was invalidated, which gave us no standing to sue State Farm. And so they, you know, and they they dismissed the whole thing, and they avoided that. So
how long was the whole court taking place? Is it
started
for a couple of years?
Started in 2017, concluded in 2020.
What were you supposed to? What did you do in business in 2020?
In dollars?
Yes.
I don't know, 16 million.
16 million?
Yeah.
But it cost you...
Oh, in 2020?
2020, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, like... Oh, geez. I don't know. Probably 10.
10 million?
11.
But it cost you 15 million just this story alone.
Just that alone, right? Yeah. No, we would have done in excess of $30 million last year, because I know the dollars that it actually cost me, right? But on top of that, you have the associated dollars that you would have made from those projects that you're doing, right? Like, I mean,
because the only reason they canceled is because of the publicity and
well, right, and then all of the neighbors are right. Like, right, a forest fire, right? The fire spreads not because of fire, but because the fire itself gets so hot, right? That's how things around it catch fire. That's the great thing about our business, right? Is like, I'm doing this job over here. The neighbor sees me doing it. If he hasn't had his job done, he wants to talk to me about doing his job, and I got a good chance of getting it. If my labor does the right thing, I'm going to get a lot of jobs around that job.
What are you trying to accomplish now?
Well, I would like for a few things to happen. I want people to know that, I was telling Quentin this also, the 80-20-20 law with lawyers, right? 80% of the lawyers make 20% of the money, 20% of the lawyers make 80% of the money. That's probably even less than that. It's probably like 10-90. But here's State Farm and these insurance companies, they're in the business of risk assessment. The reason why I lost is because they knew they were going to win. The reason they knew they were going to win is because they knew that my guy, number one, didn't know what he was doing. And they made sure that they played the game right. Right? And it's really easy to beat somebody at a game that they don't know how to play.
Is it possible to appeal the ruling?
To United States Supreme Court, not the Iowa Supreme Court. You could appeal it if there was a constitutional issue. But like, here's the thing. It's not, a suit against the lawyers that messed this up so badly is far more beneficial than to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. Then to get something heard in front of the Supreme Court is difficult, the United States Supreme Court, and to reign victorious takes a lot of preparation and it costs a lot of money. And, I, having rolled the dice in the state Supreme Court and lost, right. I don't know that I want to roll that dice on the Supreme Court stuff. But I will say that the facts were on our side if our lawyer had presented them
in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. We had on the back of our contract, it says, line item number 8, the customer understands and acknowledges contractor cannot negotiate on behalf of or represent customer.
Right here, there.
But our lawyer never presented that. He never gave the affidavit.
I wish you had my lawyer. I have the best lawyer.
I have some great lawyers now, but you know what? A smart lawyer says, you should ask your lawyer, would you take a case suing State Farm Insurance? And maybe he'd do it for you. But as a rule, I think that first of all, the lawyers are conflicted, right? The first thing they do before they're going to sue somebody is they say, I got to check for a conflict. So whoever the owner of this building is here, if I want to sue these guys, the first thing my lawyer is going to be like, well, who owns the building? And he's going to look, and if anyone in the firm has ever had any dealings with that person, sorry, I can't do it, I'm out. And so, I think there were probably parallels between me and what I wanted to do with regard to this opportunity in the Iowa Supreme Court and righting some wrongs, and my attorney. And I would say that neither one of us was prepared, but one of us was expected to be.
Wow.
Right? The lawyer is expected to be prepared when he goes in to talk to the Supreme Court. The roofing contractor is expected to be anything but prepared when he talks to the Supreme Court. And also, I didn't get a chance to talk to the Supreme Court.
Listen, I watched the whole clip like several times. I love those judges. Sometimes, you can see the judges in favor of insurance company or a bigger player. Nobody likes insurance companies. Nobody likes big bullets, the big corporations. Usually, whether it's juries or like judges, not juries, like they were on the side of the small guy. You could see it, you can feel it in their questions, engagements. I 100% agree. Like if you would have a good lawyer, you have a chance.
You know what?
What a shame.
The funny part of that Supreme Court thing was when State Farm's counsel, who Mark Parmenter was the counsel for State Farm that I interacted with, that did all the depositions. He's actually a nice guy, which I didn't like very much. I wanted this guy to be a jerk, and he was super professional and really nice. And the process itself, I don't really have a lot of criticisms of, but they used a gal, and I don't know where she was from, when they went in front of the Supreme Court, and I'm sure that's, you know, well, you know, that's with reason, right? He doesn't do the depositions, and she ends up accidentally there. But she says to the judges, she says, yeah, and they had all this crazy stuff on their estimate, like a porta potty. Yep. And the judge is like,
where should they go? I've seen it. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, she was like, I bet that drove the neighbors nuts. And, you know, the thing is like...
It was the most reasonable thing there.
Right. Well, I mean, I had an adjuster the other day. You know, we had asked for a detach and reset on the power mast. It's one of these old houses that has the pole that has the power come in. And he's like, yeah, we don't pay for that. And I was like, well, do you pay for, like, when the guy hits it with his tool and it becomes electrocuted? Like, will you pay for that? Like, some of the reasoning, like, that's not a part of our estimating practice. I understand that it's important to have well-trained people, but I think some of the things that are being trained are not common sense, you know? I mean, and evidence of such is the fact that this attorney had the gall to say, like, complain about a porta potty. Like, what do you expect people to...
But that was awesome. That's
right.
like...
Yeah.
That's the most viral clip that should go from this case.
It should.
It's like, you're not reasonable, you're reasonable. And I love how judge actually answered to it. Like, what's the alternative? Peeing in the bushes?
Right.
Like taking breaks, going to the gas station?
Right. And when another one of those judges was like, you know, with the auto body scenario, aren't you basically saying that every person that does auto body is a public adjuster? Like, you know,
it was awesome.
They did very little to pick apart our position and went to...
They tried to help you.
Yeah, they totally did. But then the opinion comes out and they
didn't have a lot to work with because they have to follow the law, they have to follow the rules, and what's in writing. I'm in the same position. Like, you know, I'm right, they're wrong, but what the law says. And it's not, you know, judge can be very sympathetic, and I think he is in my case too. I have my legal fights, but the law is the law. You're limited how you interpret it. But I have a good lawyer.
Yeah. Well, I have...
So what other lessons? Give me other lessons. So number one, have a good lawyer. I would say, here's a definition of good lawyer. For me personally, my lawyer's bill is the bill that I always want to pay with a smile on my face. If you're not paying your lawyer with a smile on your face, you don't have a good lawyer. Like, you should be happy to pay that bill. And I see a lot of guys just all they think about like $400 or $500, $700 an hour they charge. Doesn't matter. Good lawyer worth every penny, and you're gonna be happy to pay that bill. So number one, have a good lawyer. Give me other lessons from this story.
Yeah, I don't, you know.
Don't do free repairs.
Don't do free repairs. You know, going back to the very first thing we talked about, I would just also be prepared for a storm. You know, I was riding high. I mean, I got really drunk and really sick for a long time after this whole thing unfolded. Did
you always have a gray hair?
No, I definitely have a lot more gray hair too. But you know, the thing was that coronavirus was happening, right? Like, it was right in the beginning of it. So everybody's living on their mobile phone. This story comes across. There was just a hailstorm, and everybody in the community is like, huh? Like, we were the biggest roofer in town. Like, we were the guys. And there, you know, that guy that competed with me at the bottom of the barrel 12, 15 years ago? Like, it was us and him. Like, that's where we grew our businesses to. Us and them competing all the time. And we were 1 and they were 1A, or we were 1A and they were 1. However you want to say it, we were the top of the game. And it had a super big impact. And I think you got to keep trying to do what's right, though, right? I think, you know, if there were a way to appeal, we would. When we had licensed public adjusters that worked for us, they lived in Illinois. We were able to advertise on our website because we were able to advocate for people because we had licensed public adjusters that worked for us. I think it's super important to know the rules, but then play the game to the best of your ability also. Like, we live in the insurance claims world, so we do the assignment. We don't do that to circumvent any public adjuster law. We just want to be able to make sure they're listening to us when we tell them it's time to get paid. That's it. That's really all it's about. If I put 27 squares of shingles down on a house, I want them to pay me for 27, not 26, not 25, not 26.33, not some calculation that Exacta may come up with, not according to your estimating practices. At the end of the day, it's an invoice for services rendered.
Absolutely. How many online reviews does your company have?
Hundreds.
Hundreds. Have you ever been sued by homeowner, not by
Never.
insurance?
Like, one time when we first started using synthetic paper, our crew was using hammer tacker, right?
Okay.
Staples, yeah, hammer tacker, staples, and it rained in this guy's house, but we settled with him. We were like, you know what, you're totally right. Like, we owe you, we absolutely owe you, and he took us to suit, right? He did that, and we paid him because we're liable. And we feel bad, like.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we've had employees that have done work for us that did not finish their term, right? We paid them according to our agreement until a point in time where they did not perform, and then we terminated them, and we did not continue to pay them for work they didn't do. We've had a couple of those. When I was a framing carpenter before I went to Mississippi, before I was working for beer money, right? And yeah, right. Well, I mean, that's why they pay you on Friday and not Monday. So, but
That's
some
horrible.
Friday,
That's horrible.
I know.
It's just clicked.
Yeah. So some Fridays though.
Business owners, don't pay your guys on Fridays. Pay them on Mondays for better good.
Right. So Friday would come, and there's one guy that I worked for that would always pay everybody in cash and in envelopes, and some Fridays he didn't come to work. So like, it's always been important for us to like you say, your lawyer.
He didn't come to work on Friday because he had
Right.
alcohol issues?
Well, because he didn't want to pay us, or it wasn't important enough to pay us, or
like the guy who paid you
Right.
didn't come.
Right.
I thought one of the employees.
Yeah, well, lots of employees didn't come to work on Friday. Lots of employees didn't come to work a lot of time. But that was a different time, right? I think my point is that I came to understand and appreciate paying people. Like, I love payday. I love paying all of my people. I love paying my subs. I like to pay my lawyer. He does a good job for me. If you're paying for a service, it's up to you to get the service that you're paying for. It's part of why I'm so disappointed in the attorney. Like, when we knew for sure that the first young guy was not good, I made a decision to not use him, and I told the firm. And there was a lot of conflict around that, because nobody at that firm would even return my phone call. And I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to sue you guys. I'm going to sue you guys if you don't engage me immediately. And I had to go online, find the emails to all the partners, and send an email to all of the partners. So they come back to me and they're like, hey, we understand. We had a problem. Ed said, me and Comstock, another lawyer there, we're going to be helping you get this thing across the finish line. Well, the thing is that they relied on Kyle's work product and used it, and they didn't get caught up on the depositions, and they just didn't do a good job. And it was extremely costly, and it was cost in terms of relationships, right, with my family. It's just a tough thing, really tough.